Okay, so I was talking about minor races last time, and I kind of listed some of the ones that are going to be included in the book. And I talked about how they're rather. Oh, take off the. I'll leave on the glasses. It doesn't seem to get that much of the way, and I can see now. Anyway, and I talked about how there are very few minor races. The populations are very small, but the populations are rather varied. You have all these myths and legends about different kinds of ghosts and shape changers and goblins and things all over the places because evolution, the sentients that exist tend to mimic a major race once one comes into play, like humans. And there might have been a sentient species already coming into play in one area, and then humans were there, and they sort of evolved to mimic humans in different ways. So in one case, you might have like the Changxi or Chinese vampires, but they're not undead. Undead's a whole entirely different thing. In Divine Blood, they're evolved from spiders, and they're related to the Jorogumo in Japan, which are a different species and evolved in a different way. But they only evolved there, and then they got scattered throughout the world, but recently. But they only evolved there, so they have a very small population that's just in that one place. And that's why there are lots of different minor races, but all in very small populations, usually 5-digit populations, 15,000, 20,000 here and there, 50,000 sometimes. Small town populations, basically. And most of them look very human because the ones that survived the best were the ones that could look very human, or have illusions, or have shape changing, or have something that lets them look human. Okay, so after that, I think I'll go ahead and talk about basics of psychic abilities, and that's what it is. Is everything is related to psychic ability. You have sorcerers, you have magicians, and all that, but those are just derivations of using the basic psychic abilities that everybody has. And anybody can train in a psychic ability, with the rare exceptions of people like dryads and maybe some others that are crippled as a psychic. There are 3 basic types of psychic abilities. There are manipulative psychic abilities, which is controlling the physical world around you. Telekinesis, earth control, fire control, producing fire, healing someone, creating a disease, poisoning someone, stuff like that is manipulative. It manipulates the environment around the psychic. And then you have metabolic, which is the way the psychic can control their own body. This is shape-shifting, regeneration, super strength, super speed. Most of the kind of things that people do to enhance themselves and stuff like that. It's also, though they're not psychic abilities per se, people that have unusual physical senses, such as a highly attuned sense of smell, are considered metabolic abilities, even if they're not technically psychic. The super strength is a psychic ability. You can't do it without some level of producing life force basically telekinetic aura is what it is. Same with the super speed. You have to have something do it besides just the body. There's something doing the work besides just the body. Some of the physical senses and some of the lower end metabolic abilities are probably actually outright physical, just differences, like very low levels of armor and such like that. As such, what do you call it? That's what metabolic is. Manipulative is manipulating the world around you. So healing somebody else is manipulative. Healing yourself is metabolic. let's see. And then you have sensitive, which is non-physical senses, telepathy, seeing death seers, which is one of the Samezu triplets is a death seer. Hell is a death seer. They see ghosts, ghost whisperer, basically. A little bit more than that. Mao's ability to see life forces, sensitive ability. All the visionaries and all the gods and demons are sensitives because of their ability to understand the basic structure of the universe and how it works together. Oracles, people who can predict the future, are sensitives. Prophets who kind of twist circumstances are sensitives. Anything that is involving non-physical senses or controlling the mind or communicating through the mind is a sensitive ability. And these some people are born with talents like Death Seer or Earth Shaker or Electrokinetic or Visionary or whatever that gives them abilities that not just anybody can learn. You can't just learn how to do them. They're too complex for the conscious mind to just pick up how to do it. You have to be born with the genetic with the coding necessary. The genetic coding has to exist to teach for the brain to pick up how to do it. It has to be hardwired. Some of these talents can be borrowed through magic. What magic is where, say, I am a telepath, but I am not I can't control fire, but I know some magic ceremonies, and I know this person over here controls fire. I'm going to borrow his power, go like that. Magic can be learned, and some talents can be borrowed. The problem is that for most sentient people, it's not easy to borrow their powers. In order to borrow most mortals, not all mortals, because visionaries is a little bit different, but they don't have powers you can really easily borrow yet. Most mortals it's really hard to borrow their powers. They wouldn't be able to let you do it if they knew how. Because most mortal minds, the mind is a fortress. With gods, demons, and visionaries, the mind is a labyrinth. You can get in really easy. It's just a matter of finding stuff once you get in. For everybody else, the mind is a fortress that is really hard to get into, and sometimes they can't even let you in themselves. So they can't even unlock the gates to get you down deep enough to find the instructions on how to use their fire powers or their shape-shifting powers or whatever. And shape-shifting powers are hard to borrow anyway, so I'll get to that in a moment. Demons and gods, you can borrow from them really easy. They have troubles keeping people out. Really strong daydreams around them will invade their mind. They'll have somebody who's daydreaming very hard around a god or demon, and the god and demon might find themselves in the god's or demon's mind. Not know it. The god and demon might notice, they might not notice. Unless the daydreamer goes poking around really too much, and in some sensitive areas, they're usually going to get out safe without any bother. They're only going to really cause trouble if they start poking around things that make the particular immortal they're invading at the moment freak out. So it's really easy to borrow powers from gods and demons because once you find there's not as many blocks to getting. You just have to find the powers, and once you find them, it's usually easy to find them again. So that's why there's two kinds of magic. There's high magic and there's low magic. High magic is borrowing from gods and borrowing from demons. You have to pay the god's price or the demon's price, and it's different for whichever one. Then there's low magic, which is where you get sacrifices and all that, because you take a physical offering of the entity you're borrowing from in order to borrow their power to some extent. Like you take some of their blood or you take some of their flesh. For cases where you want to do a really heavy effect, you kill them, sacrifice them to steal their power. That they essentially that you're using their entire body to fuel whatever it is you're doing. And that's magic, and that's why magicians are not well trusted in the Divine Blood setting. And I've got to put in a thing there now, because I've got to put in the difference between a sorcerer and a magician, and I've noted the sorcerer families, but I forgot to note the magician where the magicians mostly get their training, outside of the ones that work with the gods and demons. Okay, and that deals with magicians, that deals with talents, and looks like I'm running out of time, but I'll go ahead and get into the last two. Talents you're born with. They're genetic things that the brain is hard-coded so that your body really easily transmits life force, which is differently named. Humans, it's chi. Gods, it's mana. Demons, it's vitae. The different mind races have their own names for it, and different races have produced different colors of life force. Humans are green, gods are blue, demons are red life force. Talent is when your brain, you were born with the hard wiring, or somebody altered you somehow to give you the hard wiring to just instinctively do a certain thing, like fire blast or shape change. And shape change is a little bit more complicated since there's an actual organ involved. It's called a shaman's rope. It's part of the brain, and it produces sort of like a virus that causes the body to change its genetic structure slightly, and then quick or heavily, and then quick rushes healing so that the body changes really swiftly. That's shapeshifting. That's why shapeshifting is hard to borrow, because if you don't have the right organ, it doesn't matter if your brain knows how to do it. There's the body part to do it isn't there. Anyway, the last, and then you have magic, which is trained, which is rituals. It's either spells. Sometimes it's spells from high magic, gods and demons, can be done relatively quickly. Not as quickly as a talent, not as quickly as a channeler, not as quickly as a shaper, quicker than a shaper, but not as quickly as a channeler or a talent, but relatively thing. But low magic is all rituals and takes time, because you have to get the blood, you have to take it in, you have to, or the flesh or whatever, you have to have some physical offering of the person who you are borrowing from. And then the last two, which I mentioned them, are channeling and shaping. And channeling is like you see on martial arts movies, the chi blasts, the auras, the force fields, the enhancing the body to do amazing things. There's three kinds basically of channeling. That's auras, blasts, which aren't all ranged, and the last one is enhancements. And then there's shaping, which is ritualistic control over life force. Shaping is very, very slow. It's all ritualistic, but it can reproduce more talents. It can't do nearly as fast or nearly as efficient as a talent, but it can reproduce a lot of them, and it can do broad scale things, and you can enchant items, and you can lay down permanent effects, and you can do exorcisms and stuff like that through shaping. Most trained psychics are shapers. Smaller number are channelers, and very, very few are both, which would be called a sorcerer. And I'm running out of time, so I will go over some more of this in a little bit here. I might go on to another subject like technology.